Good evening, listeners. Welcome to another edition of our national science magazine, Radioscope. The success of Chandrayaan 3 has become a golden chapter in our history of spacefaring. The lander Vikram and the rover Pragyan completed their assignment as per the plan of the Indian Space Research Organisation, or ISRO. Thereafter, as the chief of ISRO had commented, they remain as India's ambassadors on the lunar surface. But what happened to the propulsion module that was happily orbiting the moon after releasing the lander rover pack? Well, it seems that this unit did not receive much attention amidst the euphoria centered around Vikram and Pragyan. Early this month, ISRO confirmed that the propulsion module has been brought back to an Earth-centric orbit. The module is now conducting crucial Earth observation exercises using its SHAPE payload. This successful reverse transfer of orbit will go a long way in the country's upcoming space missions. And now, listeners, it is time to shift our focus to the items that we have in store for you today. The field of science communication is getting enriched as more and more scientists are appreciating its need. Leading physicist Dr. Archana Sharma will give us a sketch of what she has been doing in this field. Noted researcher in geriatrics, Dr. Ashis Chaudhuri, gives us an insight into his research. He tells us about aging in a fear-free, comfortable manner. We follow that up with a feature titled Left Out, focusing on the evolution of handedness in humans. Finally, we have an exclusive interview on the contributions of the outstanding mathematician Srinivasan Ramanujan, as well as the evaluation of those by later mathematicians. Professor Amartya Kumar Datta, leading researcher of history of mathematics, will provide us the insights. We start off with Dr. Archana Sharma, senior scientist at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, speaking about her endeavors in science communication.
For me, it came a bit naturally because I was mentally living in India while physically living at CERN and working there. So whatever little I would learn, every time I would come to India, I would teach to my students, my neighbors, schools who would invite me, institutions who would invite me. So it was always a sharing of whatever I learned from there. And the science communication happened more in India, I would say. Also over there, I'm doing a few things, but not to the scale with which I'm doing in India. So very gently, I saw the effect of my mere presence in a school would give some encouragement to the students that, I would tell them, if I can do it, you can do it too. And it's not that anything great I have done, you will do much greater things. So sharing my learning has been my path towards science communication. And of course, then it was more coordinated, more structured. And of course, my 3 books that have come out. One is the book called The A to Z of CERN. It was written with 2 students, one student in Hyderabad. And I was at CERN and I just told him, come on, let's do it together. It was like a student project. So that was the first book. The second book was Noble Dreams of India. And the third one is India's Science Geniuses. And in fact, I believe this is just a start. And I want all science communicators to pick this up and make geniuses out of every possible child and out of every possible scientist who wishes to be featured in the book.
That was Dr. Archana Sharma speaking on how she has indulged in science communication. Next, in Radioscope, we bring to you an interview with noted researcher of geriatrics, Dr. Ashis Chaudhuri, on tackling the physiological issues related to aging. The interviewer is Dr. Manush Pratim Das.
The science of aging is known by the name geriatrics. And there are a lot of scientists all over the world who are researching this phase of life, trying to understand why we age and whether anything could be done to reverse it. If not reverse it, at least to slow it or make that phase comfortable for the person. We have with us today Dr. Ashis Chaudhuri, Senior Staff Scientist, Bach Institute, California, a noted scientist in the field of geriatrics, who has researched the protein accumulation during old age and its bad effects on our health. We would like to know from him how this protein accumulation affects our health, how it harms our system, including the immune system, and how it pushes us towards a more sort of infirm state.
We know that accumulation of bad protein is critical for the onset of diseases like Alzheimer and Parkinson. This is a concept. People have data to demonstrate that. But people didn't have technology to understand how the protein got accumulated within cells. Usually, there is a balance between protein synthesis and protein degradation. With age, the equilibrium is shifted. Either the protein synthesis is slowed down or the protein degradation is machinery is becoming compromised. So this is the mechanism we thought it, but I experimentally demonstrate that the proteins that accumulate inside the cells during aging trigger the onset of the disease like Alzheimer. That means they basically trigger the apoptosis, the killing of the neurons, killing of the cells, which basically affect our motion, affect our short-term and long-term memory.
Dr. Chaudhuri, if we may ask, does it happen to all the animals in the world? I mean, all the creatures are affected in the same way by the degraded proteins?
That's a very good question. When I found this concept, then I was looking for short-lived and naturally long-lived animal to see whether this mechanism is pertinent with our hypothesis. And you are absolutely right. Those long-lived animals who live under harsh situation, they have the ability to get rid of the bad proteins from the cells rapidly and efficiently compared to the short-lived animals. And that's why those bad proteins, they could not get chance to accumulate inside the long-lived animal cells. Whereas in short-lived animals, they could not have the ability to get rid of their bad proteins, and those bad proteins basically triggered the death of the neurons.
Can we then logically conclude that noted scientists like you have figured out how they continue to live long, they continue to have no disease at all, sort of, yes, at least, and what are the key elements of the compounds that contribute to their well-being?
They have a very strong defense system, they have a very strong degradation machinery, they have a strong immune system, basically like bats who live 40 years under the sun, under the harsh condition, and when they carry so many viruses, bacteria, scientists found they have a very solid defense machineries as well as the immune system, and that's why those interleukins and those inflammatory response do not activate the toxic pathways to kill us.
One last question, and that is, what sort of intervention are you planning to help human beings tackle aging in a more comfortable way?
I want to let you know that I discovered a novel pathway, a novel function of a molecule of hydralazine, which is used for anti-depression drug, anti-hypertension drug. So I found in 2017 that this drug possesses anti-aging property. Now I'm working with molecules called BHB, beta-hydroxybutyrate, which basically trigger the defense machineries and get rid of the bad proteins so that the neurons can be protected, can be saved.
So those words sort of instill hope in our minds that in the near future we will be able to look at aging in a different way. So thank you for speaking to us and explaining what really could be done to make aging not so feared a phase of life and how you have done this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to an interview with noted researcher of geriatrics, Dr. Ashis Chaudhuri, on scientific ways to tackle the pain and discomfort of aging. The next item in our presentation is a feature titled Left Out. Scripted, edited and produced by Shamayita, it is a program that tries to understand the evolutionary basis of handedness or laterality in humans. Let's listen.
Ball's called and it's gone for 6. This time it's Tendulkar and it's gone 15 rows back.
All of us have seen Sachin Tendulkar bat with his right hand. But have you ever noticed which hand he uses to sign autographs? Yes, You guessed that right. It is his left hand. Sachin may have used his left hand with pride, but majority of us have grown up with the narrative that the right hand is the right hand and the left hand is the wrong hand.
Well, it actually began since the early days of my childhood. I recall on one occasion when I was in the 7th grade, my computer teacher almost forced me in front of the whole class. He basically asked me to write the number 3 using my right hand once and my left hand once. He showed both the 3s written to the whole class, and the class, succumbing to the peer pressure created by my teacher, agreed that the 3 that I had produced with my right hand looked better. And it was not the most pleasant experience.
That was Dr. Subroto Banerjee, Assistant Professor of Economics at Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Mumbai, recounting a left-hander's ordeal in a right-handed world. Professor Manjari Jain, a behavioral ecologist at Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, IISER Mohali, adds,
as a teacher, I also observe how educational materials are designed, including desks and chairs. And now, as a mother of a daughter who is left-handed, I'm even more perceptive to these things. What I have realized on visiting multiple educational institutes, schools, colleges, and larger research institutions, that oftentimes people forget that maybe small, but a sizable section of students are going to be left-handed. And oftentimes the desks that have writing boards either attached to them, or these are like wraparound desks that you have to swing. These are all on the right-hand side. And imagine how difficult it would be.
When you are a lefty living in a right-handed world, it's more than just the torture of trying to sharpen a pencil or button up your shirt without being clumsy. As the left-handers comprise of just 10% of the world population, they were clearly left out.
Left-handed people just ain't right. If they were, there wouldn't be so few. Doing things the wrong way on into the night, looking for new kids to recruit. Demanding special mitts and desks, more privilege than the rest of us. Left-handed people just ain't right.
Now, how did this expression of handedness or laterality, as scientists would call it, evolve? Let us try to understand this through the prism of evolution.
Now, one of the most important theories that were put forward was what is called the postural origins theory.
Primate behavior expert Professor Anindo Sinha of National Institute of Advanced Studies explains.
What is most important is that the roles for the two hands were centered on where the species lived, in the trees or on the ground, and what they ate. The earliest primates were arboreal and had a diet that included insects. Now, the left hand, which you must remember is controlled by the right hemisphere of our brain, specialized in reaching for food. And the right hand, which is controlled by the left hemisphere of the brain, was used in stabilizing posture. So already there was a biological bias towards certain activities controlled by the different hemispheres of the brain. As later monkey and ape species shifted to the terrestrial lifestyle, the right hand became freed from posture, and this was a very important step because it allowed us to specialize in food processing, which required greater fine motor skill and coordination between the hands.
Advanced motor skills like painting, writing, or throwing a javelin took years to develop. Dr. Arup Ratan Bandyopadhyay, Professor of Anthropology of University of Calcutta, elaborates.
Well, who is the right-handed person and who is the left-handed person? Actually, we think about the throwing arm. If you hold the things, there should be two kinds of grip. One is called power grip and one is called precision grip. what we find in case of prehistoric time, that from the lower Paleolithic to the upper Paleolithic, tool sizes in the lower Paleolithic was bigger. And coming to the upper Paleolithic, the tool size becomes smaller and they're very much precisely making the tools. In that case, the precision grip was one of the major factor. In that particular condition, what is very much important, the brain, eye, and hand coordination. For example, starting a vehicles to doing the things in computer, writing, painting, musical instruments, and everything that you need kind of precision. I feel the most important thing that we have evolved with our opposability of the thumb.
Each hand has a distinct role like any other body part, illustrates Dr. Anindo Sinha.
You can imagine stabilizing a watermelon with one hand and cutting slices with your other hand, which is typically the more preferred hand. This skill is described as role differentiated bimanual manipulation, or RDBM in short. Now, these contrasting examples of how these two hands can be used differently to act on the same object, for example, the watermelon, highlight the importance of operationally defining, for the purposes of our science, the roles of each of the hands in measuring handedness.
Scientists and design professionals are trying to make things right for the left-handers. The man-machine relationship needs deeper introspection, shares Dr. Somnath Gangopadhyay, Professor of Occupational Ergonomics at University of Calcutta.
So when you ask the people that whether this design is comfortable for you, then you will find out that sometimes it is very uncomfortable for these people because they are not right-handed, they are left-handed. So now that UX design or user experience design is a very important thing in case of the design domain or the ergonomics. So now it is very easy for us to redesign a product, to design the workstation. So both the left-handed and right-handed people can use that workstation. If you just think about the positions of the toilet flush, that was in the right-handed part. But now most of the things are making very centrally,
Left-handed people just ain't right.
The next time we see a computer mouse, a spiral-bound notebook, or for that matter hold an acoustic guitar, perhaps we will question ourselves. As the most superior race on the planet, did we get it all right?
Watch out for those left-handed people. They just ain't right.
You just heard a feature titled Left Out, scripted, edited and produced by Shamayita Das. Finally, in Radioscope, we have an interview that seeks to capture the essence of the National Mathematics Day, celebrated on 22nd December, the birthday of Srinivasan Ramanujan. It tries to bring forward a feel of what Ramanujan did and how he has been evaluated long after his passing away. In this interview, Dr. Pratim Das speaks to the noted historian of mathematics, Professor Amartya Kumar Datta.
We welcome Professor Amartya Kumar Datta of the Indian Statistical Institute to our studio. Professor Datta, how would you introduce Ramanujan and his contributions, in brief, to a person who is marginally interested in mathematics?
First, every Indian should know that Ramanujan did incredible work in mathematics at a very young age and at an astonishing rate. He died at the age of 32 in 1920. But what he did during the few years that he lived had a fundamental role in the development of 20th century mathematics. His last writings in mathematics on his deathbed are serving as an inspiration for mathematics of this 21st century. And they are having impact in physics too, like in the theory of black holes. Another point which all cultured people should realize is that his rise from the most humble conditions to the center stage of the mathematical world had impacted India's own rise in the Committee of Nations and it would surely serve as an inspiration to humanity. I give one specific example. You know that Japan was devastated at the end of the Second World War.
Right.
And then the USA had played a leading role in building up of Japan. And as a part of that, there was a conference in Japan in 1955, and that was very crucial for the world of mathematics. A huge step was taken during the conference for solving the Fermat's last theorem. Now, at that time, Japanese children were struggling for food. So, Andre Weil, who is a giant of 20th century mathematics, had given a special talk during that conference to Japanese students. Let me quote what Ken Ono has said about that talk of Andre Weil. That evening, Weil told the starving Japanese about a mysterious Indian genius. He told them about Ramanujan. There is no wonder now that so many Japanese mathematicians have gone on to study mathematics inspired by Ramanujan. They learned about Ramanujan at the very meeting where they found their own hope. That is Ramanujan's impact not only in India, but in the rest of the world.
Now, having discussed about the general impact of Srinivasan Ramanujan, we can home in on this question, our second question, which is, how have mathematicians built on the works of Ramanujan in the 20th century? And I would tag to it, how had Ramanujan inspired them?
Okay, let me begin with specific mathematician. Selberg was one of the greatest number theorists of the 20th century, who was awarded the Fields Medal in 1950 and Honorary Abel Prize in 2002. He got introduced to Ramanujan in 1934 when he was still in school, and he recalls the impact. It seemed quite like a revelation. It still seems very exciting to me and also retains that air of mystery which I felt at that time. It was really what gave the impetus which started my own mathematical work. These are Selberg's own words. And indeed, Ramanujan's work has made number-theoretic mathematics very different from what it was before. It has impacted the way mathematicians view the subject. And our Fields medalist Manjul Bhargav remarks that had Ramanujan lived to a normal age, mathematics would have been completely different, not recognizable by us. Number theory has undergone a tremendous evolution since Ramanujan's death, and many of the most celebrated achievements of 20th century mathematics are in the topics that now dominate number theory. And Ramanujan's work has an intimate connection with all these leading achievements. Let me give a few examples. Ramanujan and Hardy collaborated on what is called the partition function. So this is a function which counts the number of ways a natural number can be decomposed into smaller parts. So let us say 4. 4 can be just written as 4 or as 3 plus 1 or as 2 plus 2 or 2 plus 1 plus 1 or 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So there are 5 ways. So this is a partition function. And Hardy and Ramanujan developed a new method called the circle method to derive what is called an asymptotic formula for this function. Now, this circle method of Hardy-Ramanujan is now one of the central tools of analytic number theory and is largely responsible for major advances in the 20th century of notoriously difficult problems. And the circle method and its various refinements constitute a very large area of current research. In our own city of Calcutta, there is a strong mathematician in my institute, Professor Ritobroto Munshi. Now, he himself has established a version of the Ramanujan circle method, which has been crucial in his central important work. Another paper of Hardy and Ramanujan led to the creation of an entirely new field of mathematics called probabilistic number theory. But the most startling was Ramanujan's 1916 paper on what is now called the Ramanujan tau function. So if there is one term which has to be associated with Ramanujan, it is that Ramanujan tau function. This is central to modern theory of modular forms, which is one of the most central areas of research in number theory and algebraic geometry. And this paper really changed the course of 20th century mathematics.
Right. Listeners, as we move towards the conclusion of this interview, we have a question which needs some insight and which we believe can be delivered by Professor Datta only. And the question is like this: Hardy and Littlewood, they brought Ramanujan's work to limelight, no doubt about that. Thus, has Ramanujan's image stuck in history as one whose eminence depended completely on these experts? Does this need a review at all?
Yes, it needs a serious review. We should now read or listen carefully to the views of later mathematicians, the top mathematicians like Selberg, or in our own time, Ken Ono and Manjul Bhargav. As I said, that Selberg is among the mathematicians who have been inspired and influenced by the work of Ramanujan. And none other than Selberg says that while Hardy's assessment of Ramanujan's gifts, mark the emphasis on the word gifts, while Hardy's assessment of Ramanujan's gifts was quite correct, his overall assessment on the value of Ramanujan's work and the impact of Ramanujan's work was not. So let me quote Selberg's own words. I do not think that Hardy fully understood how the interest for Ramanujan's work would be growing when he speaks of the influence which it is likely to have on the mathematics of the future. It seems rather clear that Hardy is underestimate that. Later developments have certainly shown him wrong on that point. So we should be careful in keeping on quoting what Hardy has said about Ramanujan. If we do that, we should balance it by what Selberg has said and what more recent mathematicians like Ken Ono or Bhargav and others, many others, have been saying.
So you are urging us not to be stereotypical.
Yes, very much. And Selberg has explained why Hardy went wrong. You see, Littlewood and Hardy were primarily working with hard analysis. And they did not have a strong feeling for modular forms. And Ramanujan's work impacted 20th century by this theory of modular forms, for which Hardy and Littlewood didn't have that feel. And in fact, Selberg has said that one might speculate about what would have happened if Ramanujan had come in contact not with Hardy, but with a great mathematician of more similar talents. Someone who was more inclined in the algebraic directions, for instance, Hake, about whom I just mentioned. This might have perhaps proved much more beneficial and brought out new things in Ramanujan that did not come to fruition by his contact with Hardy. But however, Selberg does acknowledge that Hardy deserves greatest credit for recognizing Ramanujan's originality and assisting him in the best way he could. I would recommend that there are lucid articles like Selberg's Reflections on Ramanujan, which appeared in the Journal of Science Education Resonance in January 1996. Ken Ono's interview in the inaugural issue of the mathematics magazine Bhavna in January 2017. And Manjul Bhargav's talks and interviews on Ramanujan. For instance, on Ramanujan's birthday in 2020, he gave a talk, and I suppose it must be still available on YouTube. So these are the things which people should read and view to get a proper idea of Ramanujan.
Thank you, Professor Datta, for enlightening us on the contributions of Srinivasan Ramanujan and his standing in the world of mathematics. The National Mathematics Day on 22nd of December will keep reminding us about the great role of Ramanujan, no doubt, but interviews like this will always offer a greater insight into his researches. Thanks a lot.
That was Professor Amartya Datta speaking on the contributions of Srinivasan Ramanujan. With that, we come to the conclusion of this edition of Radioscope. Produced by Dr. Manoj Pratim Das, this program was brought to you by the Kolkata station of Akashvani. Your narrator this evening is Tanaya Bishash. Till we meet again, goodbye and good night.